You're listening to the Olympics.com podcast, special for Milano Cortina 2026.
I've got the best news for those of you, and I know there are plenty of you out there who have caught the Olympic bug over the last month. The games are far from over. Hi, everyone. I'm Nick McCarville. This is the Olympics.com podcast, which today focuses on all things Paralympics. As the Paralympic Winter Games, Milano Cortina 2026, they are already underway with the opening ceremony set for the iconic Verona Arena on Friday, March 6th. Today on the pod, I welcome in my Olympics.com colleague Lena Smirnova, who has already made her way to Cortina to cover the Paralympics. She's going to help us lay out some of the biggest storylines to watch out for these Paralympic Games, which are historic in several different ways. Lena is going to help us understand why. We're also going to hear from American Paralympian Dani Aravich, who, along with fellow Paralympian Brenna Huckabee and a few others, founded a media collective called Cultured, which focuses on storytelling around elite para-athletes. Part of our focus on Dani, Brenna, and their work on Cultured centers around International Women's Day 2026, which is set for this Sunday, March 8th. And this year's theme is Give to Gain. I've also got a short surprise interview for you at the end of the pod, but you've got to listen on to find out just what that entails. Let's start in Cortina at the outset of the Paralympics. Here's Lena Smirnova on some of the biggest storylines to watch out for over the next couple weeks.
From Milano Cortina to your ears, this is the Olympics.com podcast, special from Milano Cortina 2026.
Well, it's my great pleasure to bring in Lena, who is on the ground in Cortina. And Lena, good to see you. It feels like Milano Cortina, the Olympic Games, where we were covering figure skating side by side, it feels like that is now both, 10 minutes ago and 2 years ago. But tell us about the vibes in Cortina, because you get to be up in the mountains versus us being in the city in Milan for the Olympics.
Yeah, exactly. I guess I have the best of both worlds because I was in Milano and now I'm in Cortina. So I'm really living the Milano Cortina, you could say, experience. Things in the mountains are definitely, you could see the Olympics have wrapped up and everything is already changed over to the Paralympics. You see the signage, you see the people, you see the athletes on the street as well. There's a lot of excitement going on. You can sense that the athletes are in town. The flags are changing along the main streets. So there's a lot of, I think people, after being at the Olympics, they're excited to go back into the stadiums to watch the skiing, the snowboard, the curling, which are all taking place here. And it's once you have a taste of the Olympics, you want to see the Paralympic version as well. So there's a lot of excitement going on and a lot of pride as well, because some of the athletes are locals. So you could see heading into Cortina, you could see all the signage of people supporting their local athletes. René de Silvestro, for example, from alpine skiing. So it's going to be exciting to see his family and friends supporting him there as well.
Oh, it's so cool. And I have traveled now to another job after Milan, and I was in the Minneapolis airport. I saw the American wheelchair curling team, which was super exciting. And I know that they're excited to head that way. So you mentioned a couple of the sports there in Cortina, but this is a really special year for the Paralympics. 50 years since its Paralympic debut in Sweden in 1976. We've got a record of some over 650 athletes from 50 different nations. There's going to be 79 different gold medals that are handed out. You've got 6 para sports, but this really is a benchmark year, Lena, in terms of the Paralympics, that 50-year anniversary. Why is it so special this year? And what are a couple other the big things that you're looking at in celebration of that?
Yeah, we're celebrating actually its 2 anniversaries. So you mentioned correctly the 50th anniversary since Örnsköldsvik in Sweden in 1976. And then it's also the 20th anniversary from Torino, of course. And Torino was the games where wheelchair curling made its debut as a mixed team. And over here, we're going to see the mixed doubles for the first time ever. So it's a nice homecoming for wheelchair curling. And there's a reason you saw those USA curlers in the airport, is because they actually are going to have more athletes to compete in both events. So that's kind of exciting as well. And just to show how much I think the movement has grown in those 50 years is when they held the games in 1976, it was only two sports. It was only alpine skiing and para-cross country. And now we have 6 sports. 3 of them are in Cortina. There's also para-ice hockey in Milan, and there's para-cross country and para-biathlon in Tercero. So the 6 sports have stayed the same since Sochi. Sochi was the last time when we had a new sport added. That was para-snowboard. But they've definitely all grown. So you have more athletes, more competition. One of the athletes in para-snowboard, Maxime Montagioni from France, he actually did para-taekwondo earlier on in his career. And before Paris and the home games in Paris, he decided he's going to go back after winning a gold medal in para-snowboard in Beijing, go back to para-taekwondo and compete at home in Paris. And he was shocked at how good the sports have become, how competitive, and he realized he's not going to be able to place anywhere near the top in Paris, so he just went there as a spectator. And that's a good symbol of how much Paralympic sport, winter and summer, have grown. And these are going to be the most probably exciting games, because a lot of the athletes in some of the sports, as many as 80% of the athletes were under the age of 21. So there's so much room for growth. They're 4 years older. They're coming back here for these games. And the competition, I think, is going to be really outstanding.
Yeah, that's cool. I didn't know that on the age stat. And also, we talked about this a lot with the Olympic Games, but, the last time these para athletes for winter were in the Paralympic atmosphere was Beijing, and it just didn't feel quite that Paralympic, that Olympic. So to have the crowds back, like you say, the flags, the signs, the energy there in Cortina, of course, Milan and Tessero as well. Let's go to a couple of the big sporting headlines. We're going to start in sled hockey, and we saw it at the Olympics, USA versus Canada for the men and women in the gold medal, but we're going to see that for the sled hockey teams as well. The US men have captured the last 4 Paralympic golds, Lena. They beat Canada in both 2022 and 2018. They're led by Declan Farmer, who is really a trailblazer for Team USA. But Canada did win the 2024 World Para Ice Hockey Championships. The Americans took it back last year. So we've got this great setup to continue. I know in the States for the Americans, everyone's been talking about the hockey for many different reasons, but to have this rivalry now carry over to the Paralympics, it's really cool.
So those are probably the same teams that are going to face off on the ice, same ice, Santa Giulia Arena. And so USA has made the ice lucky for them in the final, but Italy in general is very lucky ice for the Canadians, because the last time they won a Paralympic title and the first time they won it was at Torino. So, like if you believe in superstitions or lucky charms, both of them have lucky charms on their side. We're going to see which ones actually pulls over. And they have been USA has been kind of dominant in recent years, but when Canada came back in 2024 at the World Championships, it was at home ice in Calgary. Such an incredible moment, full arenas just watching them, cheering them on. Such a great moment for them. I think it gave them definitely a huge boost going into these games. So unlike the previous games where USA were just slightly maybe in the favorites, here it's super tight. We have a lot of veterans coming back from the Canadian team and the USA team from Beijing and Pyeongchang. For example, the Canadian captain, Tyler McGregor, and they are tired of the silver and they want the gold. And watching para ice hockey, to me, it's always such a treat, because it's such a dynamic sport and it defies all your expectations of what you expect to see basically in para sport, because it's a little bit vicious, it's aggressive, it's super exciting. So that final for sure, it needs to be checked out. And also we have great teams from the locals, so you're gonna probably see a lot of home crowds in there as well to support. And hopefully they catch the para hockey bug, and they head back to Santa Giulia for the other games as well.
That's awesome there to continue that on a scene of so many great moments. And like you say, maybe the Italians can play spoilers there as the home team as well. I want to go now to the slopes with you, and let's talk about the Eigner siblings from Austria. They won 9 medals in para-alpine skiing in their Paralympic debut at Beijing 2022, 4 of them gold. But I want you to describe this really special family from Austria, and they've not only got podium hopes, Lena, I think, for 2026, but they've got a lot of golds.
I think it's pretty full by now.
They need another one.
They'll need I think they need a couple of extra bookcases after the trips, the competitions they've had in recent years. I remember I was still covering para-alpine circuit in person at the time. And they came on the circuit. Veronica at that point was just 15 years old. And she and her sister, Elizabeth, who is her guide, all of the siblings compete in a vision impaired class where you compete with a guide as well. And the guide also gets a medal. So she and her sister would wear these matching neck warmers, usually leopard or something spotty, and they would homemake themselves. All of the siblings, there's 5 of them, and 3 of the siblings have vision impairments, so the eldest one is Irmgard, and she was Veronica's first guide in alpine skiing, and then she retired from that post, and Elizabeth, the second oldest, took over, and now she's still guiding Veronica. She was guiding her in Beijing as well when they won 2 gold medals. And then you have Johannes and Barbara, who are twins. They're 20 years old right now. They were 16 back in Beijing, so just old enough to even compete, because if you're under 16, you can't. And Johannes is still continuing on the circuit. He just won his 5th consecutive overall globe in the middle of February to come to the Paralympic stage, and a success this family has had, single-handedly putting Austria on top of the para-alpine ranking, because they won the most medals of any of the countries in para-alpine skiing in Beijing, and it's going to be exciting to see Veronica and Johannes go for it again. Veronica also just won her 2nd overall Crystal Globe, so she's in the top shape of her life as well. It's going to be really cool to see them continue that family tradition.
Yeah, that's awesome. There's so many stories like that. Obviously, you can follow all of it on Olympics.com. Lena will be in Cortina for the next 10 days. Hey, before I let you go, you've been part of the Paralympic movement yourself for many years. What's the excitement for you to get to cover another Paralympics?
I started off with para ice hockey in 2014. At that point, it was a huge eye-opener for me, because it's not something that I was seeing when I was growing up. In my childhood, I never came in any kind of contact with para sports. So the first games were about that. Really changed my perspective on a lot of things. I was super fascinated by how para ice hockey was played. I was just coming off covering the Olympic tournament, and I found para ice hockey just as exciting, if not even more exciting than that, which says a lot. And then over time, I became a full-time reporter for para alpine skiing and para snowboard. And the thing that excites me the most is getting to see those athletes again, the athletes that I have been sort of traveling with and following for 5 years full time. I haven't seen them since Beijing pretty much. So it's going to be, and it's such a tight knit, it's almost like a family when you go in. I mean, we shared cars, we shared breakfast tables, we're all in the same hotels when we travel. And to see them again and to see how much they've grown as athletes, because the level of the sport keeps rising. I'm just so excited to be a witness for that and to speak to them again and to hear the stories of things that have happened to them in preparations for Milan Cortina.
All right. Well, you're going to be there to cover it all for us for Olympics.com. Lena Smirnova, thank you so much.
Thanks very much, Nick. From Milano Cortina to your ears, this is the Olympics.com podcast, special from Milano Cortina 2026.
Okay, so I mentioned Dani Aravich at the top of the episode, and when I spoke to Dani prior to Milano Cortina, we got to understand better what she and her fellow Paralympians are hoping to accomplish with Cultured. I asked her first to expand upon the platform's roots and inspirations, and then she's going to go on to talk about what she believes the rest of us just don't understand quite yet about the para-athletes' journey. Here's Dani Aravich.
And we actually took a lot of inspiration from Together. That was started by 4 Team USA Olympians to try to help grow the women's sports movement. We're like, okay, well, what are they doing? You know, social media channels, merchandise, like all this. And so we were really inspired and thought, well, why can't we do something? We need to take control of the narratives that are being told about us in the media. And if we're not happy about those narratives, like, let's change them. And so we brought Chuck Aoki into the fold, and Chuck was just, blowing up on social media before Paris and really building his personal brand, and was a perfect fit. And so right after the games, we launched Cultured, really focused on social media channels, because at the end of the day, we're 4 athletes who all have jobs and lives and families. So we're doing this as a project on the side, and we're hoping we can grow it to a point where we have enough funding that we can make it a full-blown, media conglomerate and bring in other athletes and other brands into the fold. And it's been cool though. Like, it's still small, but I see people have interest in it, and athletes are proud when they get to be on the channels and they're sharing content with us. Like, they see the need for it too. And so I think we are filling a gap. The biggest misunderstanding about para-athletes is how elite level the sports are. People assume because these athletes have disabilities that they aren't as athletic, they can't accomplish as much, but these sports and the way we train is so similar to our Olympic counterparts. It just might look a little bit different in the way it's actually done, but we are elite level athletes.
Dani, how much, I feel like I can tell that this hasn't been a hesitation for you now, but how much of having this platform, getting to speak your mind, how much is that something that has come naturally to you, or have you had to learn that as you've gone?
Ooh, I was pretty shy as a child. I think because I had a disability, it was easy to be shy and kind of cover up and hide. And it took going to college, and when I knew what I wanted to do career-wise, which was to work in professional sports, I almost had to, pull myself up by the bootstraps and say, you're about to enter a space where men have traditionally dominated this, and you're going to enter boardrooms and meetings. And I did. I worked in sales for an NBA team for a couple of years after college before I started competing. And I was often the only female, pitching hundreds of thousands of dollar things to people, corporations that were often men. So I had to learn how to, as a small female, like small in stature, be able to speak up and speak my mind. So when I started competing for the Paralympics, I was never going to just compete. I had to do something about it. If I got the opportunity to wear USA, I wasn't going to just show up and compete. I was going to learn everything I could about disability. I was going to learn everything I could about the Paralympics, and I was going to own it. And so I went back to school for a program to learn about disability inclusion. I studied everything about the history of how disability is shaped in the US and the Paralympic movement. And I take ownership of that, and I'm willing to be the loudest voice in the room if it means it gets something done.
Kind of hearkening back to what you said about being a shy kid, do you feel like there's still another threshold for people with disabilities to push up against when it comes to leadership and taking on those kinds of roles?
Yes. People with disabilities are so often told to be quiet or kind of shoved aside, but it's so important that their voices are heard in politics, education, media, art, culture, every aspect of society, because we make up every aspect of society, and we're just not shown very much, and maybe in a public way. But the disability community is 15% of the world's population, and so we're everywhere. And sports is a really cool way that we can talk about larger issues, because ultimately, we are so lucky we get to compete and do this, but hopefully what we're doing, what the Paralympic movement is doing, is going to affect those other areas of society and make them more inclusive and showcase more people with disabilities in all of those different realms.
How do you feel like the world would change if people with disabilities had more of those opportunities to get into those spaces?
The world will just be more representative of what the world actually is, of what its population actually is, And I think we're seeing some great movement for women, for, the LGBTQ plus community. And I think disability is still one that's like lagging back a bit in our ability to get forward. And I think it's because of lack of allyships oftentimes. And that's why I'm so thankful for Team USA, is because in so many nations, they are still separate Olympic and Paralympic committees. And like often the, Paralympic committees, some of them still have to fundraise their way to get to the games. Like the fact that we are the United States Olympic and Paralympic Committee, and our sponsors are stepping up, working with our Paralympians, and our media stepping up and talking to our Paralympians. We are trying to lift this, but again, it only matters if it helps all disabled people, because we are a select part of the disability community, para-athletes and Paralympians, but the rest of the community we can't leave behind.
Dani, thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
From Milano Cortina to your ears, this is the Olympics.com podcast, special from Milano Cortina 2026.
All right, that was Dani Aravich, a Paralympian for Team USA. She is set to compete at Milano Cortina 2026. She's competing in both para-biathlon and para-cross-country skiing. Now, I did say at the top of the episode that we had some bonus content for you today, and that entails athletic superstar Sydney McLaughlin-Levrone. Sydney is a two-time Olympic champion and the world record holder in the 400-meter hurdles. And if you follow athletics closely, you know she switched events last year. She went to the 400-meter flat. Not only did she set an American record, she also claims the world title in Tokyo in September. Sydney and her father, Willie, are spreading awareness about hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, commonly known as HCM. It's an inherited heart disease that Willie has, and they talk about just how important it is to be regularly screened and also open and honest with your loved ones about your own heart health. We spoke to Sydney and Willie about all of that, and also Sydney's plans as she and her husband are expecting their first baby in 2026. Just how does that impact her plans for LA 2028? We found that out and more.
The best of Milano Cortina 2026, only on the Olympics.com podcast.
Sydney, I want to go back to, I think you've looked up to your father in so many different ways. Has this shed new light on that relationship, or how have you seen him in a different way through this process?
Yeah, I'm very proud of him for telling his story, and just hearing and seeing the resilience, the strength and the consistency he's had through this journey. I think it's been almost to a degree therapeutic for both of us, just getting to hear him kind of express and talk about the things that he was going through with the disease early on. And some of the things that we touch on in the modules is the mental and the social aspects of having the disease. And I think, at a time he felt like those are things he had to keep close to the chest. But I think, the strength I've seen in him being able to open up and share his story is going to help so many people.
Willie, what's the biggest thing you want people to take away from you guys sharing this message the way that you have?
I just want to have people understand that there is hope. Because living with HCM, especially, like I said, there was no internet when I had it, so there's no information. You lived a life of fear of, what's going to happen. And you kind of lived in isolation because you didn't know that it was so common that so many people had it. There is hope. And, the ontrackwithhcm.com website, we hopefully be able to portray some of that. And as you said, you've seen some of the videos, let people know that there is hope and there is resources that you can reach out to be able to, form a community around you to help as you manage through this disease on a day-to-day basis.
Willie, I want to stay with you. You've had a front row seat to Sydney's greatness from day one or before day one. What do people not quite understand about your daughter and the greatness that she's achieved? I think for us mere mortals, we see the accomplishments and the world records and the gold medals, but what are a couple of the characteristics that you feel like have really propelled her to her greatness?
The starters, I just want to say that she was different right out the box. There are people who are just special, and she's special, but I think people don't realize and don't understand the level of work that she puts in to, do what she does. She strives for perfection in everything that she does. And people just don't understand that she works harder than the rest.
Have you guys talked? Obviously, I know your priority is going to be healthy baby, healthy you. Is there a working rubric for you in 2027 and beyond looking at LA 2028?
Yeah, I mean, just one day at a time right now. I don't know what the next few months looks like. So definitely just want to, keep an open palm with things and kind of go with the flow. It's going to take a lot of change, a lot of adjustment, and a lot of flexibility, bringing a new life into the world. So we're just excited for this new chapter, and hopefully it'll bring a new type of motivation for the next seasons to come.
Sydney, has anyone reached out to you? I'm thinking of the Serenas of the world or these other super moms who have done pretty incredible things coming back. Have you spoken to any other high-level athletes about their own post-pregnancy careers?
Yeah, I mean, I've been able to briefly speak with, Allison Felix and Shelly and Fraser Price. So both amazing moms and amazing athletes who, like you said, were able to come back and compete at a high level. And so it's very encouraging just to know that there's a community there, even Nia Ali, the hurdler. So there's a lot of women who have done it before me. It's not anything new, but it's exciting to know that, it's probably going to be one of the most impressive things I've ever done is bringing a human into the world and then being able to go back to my sport. I just want to inspire my child to continue to chase their dreams and strive for excellence in whatever they do.
Willie, you've watched Sydney, compete all over the world. What would it mean? Obviously, there's a few hurdles, both literally and figuratively, before LA 28. But what would it mean to you and the family to see her be able to compete at LA 2028?
It'll mean the world to us. I mean, we're excited. We're just also excited to see what post-pregnancy Sydney's going to look like, because a lot of athletes have gone on, had children, come back and done even better than they did before and done amazing things. So we're also excited to see that. And we're excited to be able to have a home Olympics and be able to witness that in LA.
Lastly, Sydney, this Sunday is International Women's Day. And this year the theme is Give to Gain. Obviously, we're talking about this campaign here today with you and your father, but you've always been someone that has given back and really tried, I think, to lay that groundwork for the next generation of female track stars. Why is it important for you to continue to look for campaigns and for ways to give back for the next generation? Why has that been a priority for you in your career?
Yeah, I think just pursuing growth and excellence in whatever you do requires gaining knowledge. And so that means also being willing to share knowledge. And so for me, being able to give back from the things that I've learned and experienced to the next generation and help in any way, shape, or form is things that I wish I had when I was coming up. And so it's exciting to be able to do that. And I hope that we also have a chance, like you said, with this campaign to give back and just be able to share my dad's story as well as a lot of resources that can help many people.
Sydney, Willie, thank you so much.
Thank you, Nick. Appreciate it.
Take care.
You're listening to the Olympics.com podcast, special for Milano Cortina 2026.
Okay, that does it for us on this episode of the Olympics.com podcast. A lot to look forward to with the Paralympic Winter Games getting underway at Milano Cortina 2026. And we heard from a couple fierce females today, actually 3 of them. And that's in part in celebration of International Women's Day, which is set for Sunday, March 8th. We've got a tremendous team across the Paralympics, Lena included, over these next 10 days. So please do check out our coverage on Olympics.com. And like Dani was encouraging us, check out the countless inspiring stories. These are elite, world-class athletes. We get to soak in their greatness on the playing field and off of it. Can't wait for these Paralympic Games. It's been a great pleasure, as always, to be with you here on the pod. For the whole team, I'm Nick McCarville saying stay golden. We will speak to you again in another couple weeks. Bye-bye.
The best of Milano Cortina 2026, only on the Olympics.com podcast.